Good evening. You're watching the news on Croatian television. Lawmakers voted to create an investigative commission to look into what brought Agrokor to the brink of bankruptcy. The commission was the result of months of negotiations between the HDZ and opposition SDP. The 9-member commission will be led by the SDP's former Justice Minister, Orsat Miljenić, and is set to begin work on October 30th.
The first thing I will do is call a meeting for tomorrow morning. The goal is simply to sit down and organize our thoughts. I will then ask my colleagues to write down some basic points and directions within the next week or so. After that, we will meet again. In this way, we will have defined exactly who will be the focus of our investigation by the time the committee comes into force on October 30th.
Meanwhile, several smaller parties in Parliament voiced their concerns following the vote, blaming both the HDZ and SDP with creating, or at the very least contributing, to the problems within Agrokor.
I think this is simply a parliamentary terror on the part of the two largest parties in Parliament. While they are making deals amongst themselves, we are left with the crumbs. I will not be able to accept the conclusions of this commission because the very same people who caused the problems in Agrokor are now supposed to decide on the conclusions drawn by the commission. The creation of an investigative commission tasked with investigating itself is a textbook example of conflict of interest.
MPs also confirmed the nominations of 3 Constitutional Court justices, Miroslav Šeparović, Goran Selanec, and Mato Arlović. The SDP and HDZ had also reached an agreement on the judges some time ago, but voting had been delayed by the SDP, who threatened to pull their backing if the HDZ failed to support the Agrokor Commission.
We have managed to elect 3 Constitutional Court justices and also create an investigative commission to look into Agrokor. Therefore, after 3 months of negotiations, we have managed to convince the HDZ to create the Agrokor Commission. I think this was a hard-fought battle, but I will refrain from calling it a victory for the SDP. I think this is merely the beginning of our plan to create a better and more responsible Croatia. From now on, it will not be possible to hide billions and pass controversial laws without first reaching a consensus.
The war of words continues between Agrokor's disgraced founder Ivica Todorić and Economy Minister Martina Dalić. Todorić says the minister is acting well beyond her authority, assuming the role of judge, jury, and executioner. In his latest blog post, he deflected criticism regarding his own guilt in the near downfall of his retail empire by accusing the minister of siphoning off funds from the consortium.
Martina Dalić has assumed responsibility over all aspects of public authority. She has become a legislator, prosecutor, and judge. In doing so, she has clearly overlooked the presumption of innocence as one of the basic preconditions for the functionality of every democratic society. My guilt will definitely not be determined by Martina Dalić, because in the end, it is she who will have to prove her innocence. And this will not be easy, especially considering the number of criminals she has in her network of friends and business partners who together have siphoned off money from Agrokor for illicit gain.
Prime Minister Andrej Plenković once again came to the defense of his economy minister, dispelling allegations of secret meetings and conspiracies. He added that the so-called Lex Agrokor was in the country's best interest.
These stories about secret meetings between this person or another are completely irrelevant. The important thing is that the Croatian government showed courage and a long-term vision by making the only possible decision available at that time. And that was to avoid bankruptcy or nationalization by enacting legislation which has allowed us to now be discussing the further restructuring of the company and settling their debts without any kind of expense on the part of the Croatian taxpayer.
In more Agrokor news, Interior Minister Davor Božinović declined to comment as to the whereabouts of Ivica Todorić. The minister said that the investigation was being conducted by the State Attorney's Office. Meanwhile, speaking on Croatian television, the former head of the anti-corruption agency USKOK said the Agrokor affair was a crucial litmus test for state prosecutors.
It's very possible that Ivica Todorić will not be the only suspect in this whole affair. It's difficult to say how many there will be, but it would not be wise to make a huge spectacle and involve a large number of suspects, because that would mean a very lengthy and drawn-out process that would bring the credibility of the entire government into question. I think the State Attorney's Office should be as level-headed as possible and show good decision-making, not only for this case, but cases down the line as well.
In other news, negotiations continued between the government and public sector unions on a new collective bargaining agreement, with the current deal set to expire at the end of the month. Both sides say they are confident of reaching a satisfactory agreement.
2 meetings are being held per week by the negotiating board and the working group. What I can say for sure, based on what I've seen today, is that from our side and that of the unions, there exists a spirit of good faith.
As far as the policies towards salaries and pay are concerned, we see it as a sort of debt owed by the Croatian government. Therefore, this will also be part of our future discussions.
In more news from the labor front, independent trade unions are demanding the government raise the minimum wage or face protests. Union leaders organized a forum at the Europe House in Zagreb on higher pay and better quality jobs for all workers. They concluded that a pay raise would ensure a more sustainable economic growth.
There needs to be an immediate pay raise across the board. The collective bargaining agreement must include higher salaries throughout the public sector, as well as an increase in the number of permanent jobs. The Association of Independent Trade Unions will begin organizing protests if over the next few days the government does not open negotiations on the law on minimum wage.
Taking a quick look at sports, in EBEL Hockey League action, Medveščak beat Austrian side Villach 5-2 in Zagreb last night, after a poor start that saw them give up 2 goals early in the game. After 10 rounds of play, the Bears are in 5th place with 15 points, while the Vienna Capitals are first with 27 points. In tennis, at the WTA tournament in Linz, Austria, 20-year-old Croatian Jana Fett goes up against Barbara Stricova of the Czech Republic in second-round action tomorrow. And finally, at the ATP Masters Series tournament underway in Shanghai, Croatia's Marin Cilic will play American Steve Johnson for a place in the quarterfinals on Thursday. The weather forecast for tomorrow will be mostly sunny, but slightly cloudier than today. The northern Adriatic can expect light showers, while low-lying areas will get morning fog. Winds mostly weak, with a moderate northeasterly in the morning and a northwesterly in Dalmatia during the afternoon. Seas mostly calm, with fog in the morning affecting visibility. Morning lows of between 4 and 9 in the interior and between 11 and 15 on the coast will give way to highs of 21 to 24 degrees Celsius. The forecast for the days to come will be mostly stable. Continental regions will be slightly cooler due to lingering fog in places, especially over the weekend. Temperatures during the day are expected to be around 20 degrees and above, but depending on how quickly the fog will clear. The Adriatic coast for the next few days will be sunny and warm, with highs of between 23 and 26 degrees. Winds are expected to be a moderate northerly, with a northeasterly in places during the morning. And that brings us to the end of our program. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow night.